Well, welcome to June. And somebody turned up the thermostat, didn't they? Wow, goodness gracious. It came on with a vengeance in a hurry. And we are starting our summer reading program. We haven't really done book studies per se here, and we're not doing a book study, but I'm using some books this summer to make it light, bright, and airy. It's Arizona, it's hot, and we're all in town, right? So we might as well have fun with it. We're going to start off with The Wisdom of Winnie the Pooh. And today we're going to start talking about, I want to give you a summary of Winnie the Pooh, and I read a lot of analogies of the book, and one of them that I thought was really cute was, it's a story about a dumpy little bear that wanders around asking silly questions, making up songs and going through all sorts of adventures without ever accumulating any intellectual knowledge or losing his simple-minded sort of happiness. Well, it sounds pretty good, though, doesn't it? Yeah, that doesn't sound like a bad thing. And I happen to think he's a wise philosopher. If you've been around here a while, you know I use his quotes periodically as one of my philosophical bests. And I love this one that he has. He says, "Love is taking a few steps backward, maybe even more, to give way to the happiness of the person that you love." Now, that's pretty wise to me. That's pretty wise. So our story today, our talk today, is Tracking a Woozle. Now, you might ask, what's a woozle? I have no idea. I think it's in the snipe family, though. Anybody been snipe hunting? I think it's in the snipe family. But we'll see. So let's start off with our story. And I'm cutting kind of to the middle of it, so you'll catch on. "Hello," said Piglet. "What are you doing?" "Hunting," said Pooh. "Hunting what?" "Tracking something." "Tracking what?" "Just what I ask myself. I ask myself, what?" "What do you think you'll say?" "I shall have to wait until I catch up with it. Now look there." He pointed to the ground in front of him. "What do you see there?" "Tracks. Paw marks." He gave a little squeak of excitement. "Oh, Pooh, do you think it's a woozle?" "It may be. Sometimes it is, and sometimes it isn't. You can never tell with paw marks." With these few words, he went on tracking, and Piglet, after watching him for a minute or two, ran after him. Winnie the Pooh had come to a sudden stop and was bending over the tracks in a puzzled sort of way. "What's the matter?" asked Piglet. "It's a very funny thing," said Bear, "but there seem to be two animals now. This whatever it was has been joined by another whatever it is, and the two of them are now proceeding in company. Would you mind coming with me, Piglet, in case they turn out to be hostile animals?" Piglet scratched his ear in a nice sort of way and said that he had nothing to do until Friday and it would be delighted to come in case there really was a woozle. "You mean in case it really is two woozles," said Winnie the Pooh. And Piglet said, "Nah, I don't have anything much to do until Friday." So off they went together. Imagination. Did you just use your imagination to see these characters maybe? To envision what they were doing? They're actually standing in the snow, looking at tracks in the snow and trying to figure out what this is. So we use our imagination to envision these stories and the words that we hear. And in Science of Mind, we talk about using our imagination and tools around how to create through our imagination, because we first know something in our mind and in our thoughts before we see it in form. It's the idea into form. And we talk about good things, and we try to create good things, and we have seeds that we plant into the soil, and we grow the idea. Well, seeds and soil are metaphors, right? It's not actually planting a seed in soil that we're going to manifest the new house or whatever we might be looking for. It's the idea and the thought into the action of law. Well, and it works the same all the time, but we also have a tendency to believe in ghosts in the closet and goblins under the bed, don't we? So we can create those good and powerful things and those scary and terrifying things as well through this power of our imagination, can't we? Yeah, we can. And frequently we will scare ourselves, won't we? Would you come with me, because in case they're hostile? In case they're hostile. So Winnie's making up this idea of the scary woozles that may be out in front of them. He's making that up. He doesn't know, but he's making it up. He's making it up. So what wonderful or terrifying things are you making up? How are you using your imagination today? How are you using your imagination? Are you using it to excite yourself and create positive and uplifting, or are you using it to scare or even terrify yourself through the beliefs and the ideas? How are you using the power of your imagination? Ernest Holmes, the founder of the Science of Mind, says in the text about imagination, he says, it awakens within us all the inner forces of nature and stirs into action latent powers which otherwise would never come to the surface. Stirs into action latent powers which otherwise would never come to the surface. Same thing. That can be those powers that move us forward and advance us in the direction of our dreams, or it can be those latent powers that stirs the fear and stirs the concern, stirs the worry. Our imagination can do both of those. So the question is, what are we allowing in our minds that we keep tracking, that we're tracking, that becomes one set of prints into two set of prints? What are we allowing in? That is that proverbial molehill that becomes the mountain. It can be the good, can it? We start with the idea of, well, maybe. We believe in infinite possibilities. Maybe that's possible. And then we go to, well, might. It might be possible. That's a little more belief in that. It might be possible. There's a probability in it. And then we go into, well, of course that's the way things are. Of course that's just the way things are. And that's where it becomes a belief. And again, both tracks of that, those that are powerful and positive and uplifting, and those that maybe are not so much so. Those that are not so much so. Doubt is a wonderful example of this. It can start very small, and then the next thing you know, we believe that's just how it is. That's just how it is. Do you remember the story from the Tao? We use pieces of it periodically, but we'll tell the whole thing today. A farmer had one horse, loved that horse. Horse ran away. Neighbors came over and said, "Oh, I'm so sorry, your favorite horse ran away." And he said, "Why do you think that is terrible? Why do you think that is terrible?" Because a month later, the horse came home bringing with it two beautiful stallions. And the neighbors came over and said, "Oh my goodness, that is such good news and so wonderful." And he goes, "Why do you think that's good and wonderful?" A couple of weeks later, his one and only son was thrown from one of the stallions, breaking his leg badly. The neighbors came over, "Oh, we're so sorry, it's so bad, your son has broken his leg." He says, "Why do you think that is bad?" And then a week later, the army came through and a war broke out. And everyone, all of the men and boys in the village were conscripted into the army, except the farmer's son. Because of his broken leg, he could not serve. And the neighbors came over and congratulated him about the fact that his son did not have to go to war. Why do you think that's good? Why do you think that's good? And we do that. We want to have a story. We want to have completion. We hear something and we make up the story. We make up the rest of the story about it to where, oh, that must be good. That must be good. Or that must be bad. It must be bad. Because we're filtering all of this through our perceptions, through our perspectives. And isn't it a more powerful place to be able to stand in the now and say, this is for my good. This is for my good. It may not be something that I am enjoying, or it may be something I'm having a wonderful experience of. This is for my good, and it is a step on the path of my journey of evolution through this thing called life. Is that a more powerful place to stand than this back and forth, it's good, it's bad, it's good, it's bad, oh my gosh? This is for me. And it is empowering me on my journey, on my upward spiral of evolution in my journey through life. Yeah. So we have this idea about really, it's inherent with all of us to create an ending, to analyze, theorize, futurize. Don't we do that? And we see this a lot in forgiveness work, where we'll take a thought that someone has said, and we hold it, and we're angry, we're hurt, and we see that other person, and they're wandering around life happy as a clam. Or like, why are they not upset? They did this to me, right? And we're all in angst and angry and making ourselves sick maybe about it. Because we have taken something they said or some activity that occurred and perhaps misinterpreting it, and then we hold it in that place of unforgiveness rather than talking about it, because we've made up a story about what that meant. And it wasn't what they meant it to mean, it's what we took it to mean. So communication and clearing that up can alleviate that for us. But in that case, we're creating our own struggle, we're creating our own suffering at that time by what we've made up about that story. My latest on that is, y'all know, I get a little stressed driving, right? I've shared this once or twice that I do. And I've got this thing about being on time, or even a little early. And with certain events of my life, I just don't always have that luxury anymore, and I'm right on time or late. And I'm feeling stressed sometimes when I get in the car to leave. And then traffic's just not cooperating. Now, I grew up in a very small rural town where I didn't learn at a young age how to drive in traffic. I learned how to pass tractors. So I finally experienced traffic in Los Angeles. Good morning. Yeah, and so I come here and I'm get in the car and it's like, why can't these people drive? Anybody had that thought besides me, or am I the only one? Yeah, okay, yeah. So what I have been practicing of late is this idea of, this is in my best interest to arrive at the perfect right time, to trust that if I'm being delayed through the divine order of the universe. Have you ever felt like stumbling blocks were put in your way, that you just are late getting going? And then to find out you've had an experience of arriving late to a meeting to meet someone that you needed to walk in with, to have a conversation with. So when I can remember and get myself back to that place, then I can stop and smell the roses. I can relax in my car. I've got 30 minutes of alone time. I can turn off the radio and have quiet time. I can turn on some beautiful music, listen to a book. Or I can create my own suffering and angst by grumping at every driver on the road, right? And just increasing my own blood pressure and angst and, okay, you get the message, right? We're at choice. We're at choice on how we want to experience life. I saw a wonderful quote this morning. Did I lose it? Nope, there it is. From Abraham. I don't know how many of you get Abraham's little note every morning. I thought that was really wonderful because we talk about the power of choice here all the time. And what she said is that choice of action may be limited, but our choice of thoughts is never limited. And that is so much more clear than what we say, isn't it? Because we say, oh, we're always a choice. And sometimes it doesn't feel like it, does it? So our actions may be limited in that moment, but our thoughts are not. Our thoughts are not. That's a very powerful shift in that thinking. So what do you think our little furry friends would do when they find the woozle? Let's go back to our story and find out. There was a small spiny of larch trees just there, and it seemed as if the two woozles, if that was what they were, had been going round this spiny. So round the spiny went Pooh and Piglet after them. Piglet passing the time by telling Pooh what his grandfather, Trespassers W., had done to remove stiffness after tracking, and how his grandfather, Trespassers W., had suffered in his later years from shortness of breath and other matters of interest, and Pooh was wondering what a grandfather was like. And perhaps if this was two grandfathers they were after now, whether or not he would be allowed to take one home and keep it, and what Christopher Robin might say. And still the tracks went on in front of them. Suddenly, Winnie the Pooh stopped and pointed excitedly in front of him. "Look!" "What?" Piglet said with a jump. And then to show he hadn't been frightened, he jumped up and down once or twice more in an exercising sort of way. "The tracks," said Pooh. "A third animal has joined the other two." "Pooh," cried Piglet, "do you think it's another woozle?" "No, because it makes different marks. It is either two woozles and one, as it might be, whizzle, or two, as it might be, whizzles, and one, if so it is, woozle. Let us continue to follow them." So they went on, feeling just a little anxious now, in case the three animals in front of them were of hostile intent. And Piglet wished very much that his grandfather, T.W., were there instead of elsewhere. And Pooh thought, how nice it would be if we met Christopher Robin suddenly, but quite accidentally, and only because he liked Christopher Robin so much. And then all of a sudden, Winnie the Pooh stopped again and licked the tip of his nose in a cooling manner, for he was feeling more hot and anxious than he had ever in his life before. There were 4 animals in front of them. "Do you see it, Piglet? Look at their tracks. 3 as it were woozles, and 1 as it were whizzle. Another woozle has joined them." And so it seemed to be. There were the tracks, crossing over each other there, getting muddled up with each other here, but quite plainly, every now and then, the tracks were 4 sets of paws. "I think," said Piglet, when he licked the tip of his nose too and found that it brought very little comfort, "I think that I have just remembered something. I have just remembered something that I forgot to do yesterday that shan't be able to do tomorrow, and I suppose I should really get all back to it now." "We'll do it this afternoon, and I'll come with you," said Pooh. "It isn't that sort of thing you can do in the afternoon," said Piglet. "It's a very particular morning thing that has to be done in the morning, and if possible between the hours of, what would you say the time is?" "About 12, I think," said Winnie, looking at the sun. "Between, as I was saying, the hours of 12 and 12:05. So really, dear old Pooh, if you'll excuse me." "What's that? What's that?" Now they've heard something. Not only are they seeing the tracks in the snow increasing in front of them, now they've heard something. Uh-oh. And we're at that phase in our imagination of, okay, I've had enough, I've scared myself enough, I gotta go home now. I've had enough. You ever been there? Yeah, it's time to go. It's time to go. I've had enough fun. Time to go. So they're in their bravado, aren't they? "Oh, it's okay. I need to go do something else. I'm not to share with each other that they're actually terrified right now." So they've created this drama in their mind. The drama in their mind. And I equate that to being a prisoner of our own thoughts. Anybody ever been a prisoner of your own thoughts? I have. Something comes into your mind uninvited, unbidden, some conversation. Why'd they say that? What'd they mean? I bet they meant this. And then I call it my hamster wheel gets going. And it just keeps going. And I'm getting no solutions whatsoever. It's just the same thought. It's just the same conversation over and over and over. What'd they mean? Why'd they say it? Why'd they call? Why'd they not call? When they called, they did this. And what did they mean when they called, when they said that? I wonder what they meant when they did that in that meeting. And why are they scheduling that meeting next week? And oh my gosh. Don't we do that? Yeah, I call that being a prisoner of our own thoughts, and it triggers in me that saying from the Bible, get behind me, Satan. It's the thoughts that get out of my head. I didn't invite you. Get out of there. I don't want to talk. I don't want to talk to you anymore. I don't want to talk to you anymore. And it just feels like those hamsters in my brain running round and round and round. And we go back to what we talked about last month. Just stop it, right? Just stop it. But sometimes they just, we stop it, we consciously stop it, and the next thing you know, it's back again, isn't it? Anybody go through that besides me? Yeah. It's like, all right, how do we do this? So what can we do if we're in that endless feedback loop, creating our own struggle? creating our own struggle through our thoughts. Let's go back to Pooh and see what they did in that moment of fear. So Pooh looked up at the sky, and then as he heard the whistle again, he looked up into the branches of a big oak tree, and then he saw a friend of his. It's Christopher Robin. "Aw, you'll be all right," said Piglet. "You'll be quite safe with him. Goodbye." And he trotted off home as quickly as he could, glad to be out of all danger again. Christopher Robin came slowly down the tree. "Silly old bear, what are you doing? First you went round the spiny twice by yourself, and then Piglet ran after you, and you went round again together, and then you were just going round a fourth time." "Wait a minute," said Winnie. He sat down and thought, in the most thoughtful way he could think. Then he fitted his paw into one of the tracks. He scratched his nose twice, and he stood up. Yes, I see now," said Winnie. "I have been foolish and deluded, and I am a bear of no brain at all." "You're the best bear in the world," said Christopher Robin. "Am I?" said Pooh hopefully. And then he brightened suddenly. "Anyhow, it's nearly luncheon time," so he went home for it. So that's the end of our Woozle story with the boys. But isn't that interesting on how that whole adventure was all imagined? It was their own tracks they were tracking. It was their own tracks they were tracking, and developed all of that fear and that angst and that whole story about woozles and whizzles. And Christopher Robin sitting in the tree the whole time watching and going, "What are they doing? What are they doing? What are they doing?" So my question for us today is, who's your Christopher Robin? Who's your go-to? When you're stressed, when you're in fear, when things aren't going your way, who's your Christopher Robin? You know, I would suggest God, Spirit, the divine, the essence, the presence, the one. Going within. When the fears come up, when the boogeyman and the goblins come out, it's time to go within and check in with our higher self, our higher wisdom, that power, that presence. For God is clarity. God is love. God is all of that which we seek outside of ourselves quite frequently, don't we? When we get afraid, what's our go-to? What's our go-to? Do we take care of a habit maybe that we have? Do we go shopping? Do we turn on the internet, the TV, Facebook? Anybody have that lovely bad habit? I need to look something up on the internet for business, and the next thing you know, I'm on Facebook for an hour and a half? Yeah. I see a lot of grins out here. I think I'm not the only one on that one. So I just want us to think about living a spirit-centered life. If that's our go-to response in struggle, stress, angst, fear, joy, gratitude, think about that as the center and the focal point of your life. Now, if you're not there, if it's not a habit that you already have, it's one that can be created, because we know we have this power of our thoughts, and we've already determined that we can't always keep them focused. We can't always keep them focused. So that's one of the keys, is to catch ourselves in this and try to keep ourselves focused on it. And we talk about it here, this idea of let go and let God. That can sound like separation, can it? And we don't teach separation. So the idea is really let go and let God flow through us. Because Spirit can't do anything for us that Spirit can't do through us. We are not puppets. We have free will and choice, and it has to come through us. But we, in our need to control or do for ourselves, block that. Don't need help. Don't ask for help. And that's part of the key, is in the ask. So let go and let God flow through us. Stop blocking the flow. So this month, my pearls of wisdom I'm sharing with my furry friend. And they're going to become Pooh's pearls of wisdom for this month as we talk about Winnie the Pooh, because I do think he's a wise philosopher. And we talk every week about meditation, and I love his first one. Don't underestimate the value of doing nothing, of just going along, listening to all the things you can't hear, and not bothering. Not bothering. Doesn't that sound wonderful? I'm going to invite you once again to our meditation class this month coming up. Give yourself that gift. Give yourself that gift of meditating in community, the experience of learning to meditate if you don't have a practice, of deepening your practice in community with others if you do, and bring your consciousness and awareness to it. Remember, we talked last month that this is about our planet, that meditation is not just for ourselves, it's for raising the consciousness of the entire planet. Number 2, on friendship and a call for help. This is from today's story. This whatever it was has now been joined by another whatever it is, and they're now proceeding in company. Would you mind coming with me, Piglet, in case they turn out to be hostile animals? Would you mind coming with me? Our thoughts or imagination can scare us. We can make up all sorts of things in our life around our jobs, our careers, our financial abundance, our relationships, and our health. We can make up all sorts of stories. We can scare ourselves with those stories. So call a friend, call a practitioner, ask for help. Because asking for help is the second step in healing. The first step is recognition. And finally, his third pearl is on thinking. Did you ever stop to think and forget to start again? Did you ever stop to think and forget to start again? In the midst of struggle, stop and think. Stop the struggle and just think. Stop the hamster wheel and be for a few minutes. Stop and pray. And forget to start the struggle again when you come out of the prayer. Break the habit of bad thinking. Just let it go. So this week's practice, my invitation to you to take this home and play with during the week and practice during the week. First step is watch your thoughts. Watch your thoughts. And when you get to the endless feedback loop and the hamsters are running in your head and won't stop and they're going 100 miles an hour and oh my goodness, I need a stick to put in the wheel, you realize that you're just creating emotional stress in your body, because that's our key, isn't it? We feel it in our body. When we feel that stress, notice that. And then stop and think about God. Like Pooh says, maybe forget to start thinking about the original thought again. Maybe stop thinking about it. And we can choose our thoughts and choose those which empower us, which is along with what Abraham said this morning, is that the choice of our thoughts is unlimited. The choice of our thoughts is unlimited. And if you get stuck, you can't change them by yourself, call a friend. Call a friend, talk about it, call a practitioner and pray about it. Ask for a new thought. Ask for a new thought. And I promise you, your practitioners will give you a new thought, a new way to look at it, a new perspective to look at that struggle, to help you find the spiritual truth within yourself about it. That's what they're here for. So the act of asking opens us up to receive. Think about that. The act of asking opens us up to receive. But we must ask and get out of our own way. Make sense? Yeah. So I want to close today with a quote by our founder, Dr. Ernest Holmes, and I know you know it. And it's his, change your thinking, change your life. And I've taken liberty and changed it a little bit this morning. Change your thinking and your life will change. Change your thinking and your life will change. I promise. I promise. So I'd invite you to please join me in prayer as we take this into prayer this morning and anchor it. So just breathing this in recognition of that one power and presence that is in, through, and as each one of us, as life, as love, as joy, as harmony, as peace. I recognize that this infinite love is all that there is, has ever been, ever will be. That the abundance of the universe is such that we can't imagine it. We can't fathom it. There's so much. And the order, and the perfection, and the wholeness, and this thing called evolution. Ever growing, ever expanding. And I know that I am in, through, and as that, as it is in, through, and as me, as an expression of it, for we are one, as is each and every one in this room. We are all one in that wholeness of the divine, in that oneness of love, in that oneness of joy, in that clarity, wisdom, peace, wholeness. So from that place, I speak my word for and about each one here this day, knowing, claiming, and accepting the truth of who and what we are as these divine beings and expressions of light, of love, of joy, of peace, harmony. And as we creatively use this faculty we call, this gift that we call our imagination, we use it in such powerful ways to create the life of the dreams and desires that have come through us. And I know that as we all connect with this inner presence within us, as us, through us, that we allow it to flow, that we open ourselves and allow this presence of love, this presence of joy to flow through us, for the greater expression of itself as us, individualized and unique. And I know for anyone this day that has anything on their heart, anything that they're working with, we lift that in this expression of prayer into the light, knowing the full manifestation of it. Knowing for anyone that's lost a loved one this week, the peace, the love, the memories, the joy in that life shared. And for any that could not be with us here this day, that they are on their perfect right place, in perfect right path, in their perfect right place, doing what they need to be doing this day. And we bring them into our service in consciousness. So it's in great gratitude that I simply release this into the action of law, knowing that it is done, it is so, and we affirm it together by saying, and so it is.